Welcome to Ion Franchising, where you will learn the A to Z's of franchising. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another fabulous episode of Ion Franchising. I am your host, Lance Graulich, and of course, I have a special guest, as always, today. This gentleman is extra special, and we're going to get to hear his whole story in his early retirement. Not really, but most people think the goal is to build up a business, sell it, and retire. And that's not always the right move for everyone. Okay. I guess everybody has their opinions. So today, let's see, he hails from Ohio, the great state of Ohio. And he's an Ohio State graduate, 1985. And a marketing degree. At 29, like a lot of people, he decided he had enough working for the man. His motivation specifically was a desire to be his own boss. How many of you listeners out there would like to be your own boss? Well, this gentleman, Rik, started Window Genie. They were a guest not too long ago on the show, and it's his brand. Window Genie, 1994, he started Window Genie as a small window cleaning company. He wanted to do something low tech, little overhead, and he was quite successful. So successful that in late 2016, Neighborly, the giant behemoth of franchising, we'll talk about that, they acquired Window Genie in 2016, and Rik cashed out. 22 years, founder and CEO of Window Genie, Rik Nonelle. Rik, welcome to the show.
Lance, good afternoon, and thanks for having me. Excited to be with you today. I appreciate it.
So excited to have you, Rik. So fill in the blanks. What did I leave out in that story? I'm sure I left out a couple hours worth of material, but start with the important parts.
Well, you left out like the sleepless nights, the stress, employees quitting, stuff that keeps people from becoming owners. But I always said, ownership is supposed to be tougher than your best job. So that's just part of the deal. But
no, but let me sorry to interrupt, but I have to jump in college. So a guy like you in college, what did you want to do when you graduated in the first place?
Well, that's to me the funny part of the story, but I think very typical with lots of people. So I have a brother-in-law who also hailed from the Ohio State, as did my sister and my brother. And today he's a plastic surgeon. I'm pretty sure in middle school, he knew he wanted to be a doctor, maybe just not what kind of doctor. I was the path where you go to college and I didn't know what I wanted to do. So you go to business school, and I did well in the business school, and that's what you do to get a good job. And you can't have the good job without the degree, and then you do the interviews and off you go. And that's pretty much what I did. I didn't know where that path was going to take me, but it didn't take long, a few years, 3, 4, 5 years. And I think the one tipping off point was, I don't know what I expected in the land of being an employee, but what I felt pretty quickly was I was just out there doing the do, waking up every day, working hard, showing up. And all the people that were above me, owners, head big managers, it appeared had become very, very wealthy in their jobs, and maybe just didn't care about the people that were below them, or certainly a 22-year-old college grad. And so I felt very uninspired. No one was mentoring me. We didn't have team lunches. I didn't feel like anybody was going to really help me work up the ladder or motivate me to do better than I was trying to motivate myself. And really, after multiple years of doing that, I thought it doesn't fit any longer. So I literally had zero aspirations in college or throughout my 20s to own something. But one day I woke up and it was a ton of bricks. All the things that I was feeling and lack of things I was getting from my employers, it hit me. And the only one thing it said was, if I want to change, and change is scary, but I was ready, which is why your why for starting a business is really critical. My why said, it's time. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew today is the day I start that process of finding a business to own and run.
I love it. That's such a great story. So we're going to go to the end first, and then we'll kind of work backwards a little bit. So everybody's dream when they start their own business is to, after all the sleepless nights and hard work and fumbling in the abyss, that dark black hole of starting your own business without a franchise. Window Genie wasn't a franchise. It was a brand you created. You didn't have that blueprint. You didn't have that roadmap, but somehow you managed to figure it out, add revenue streams. Like I said, we're going to work backwards here. And boom, all those years later, you get bought out for a lot of money. And, some people retire, some people don't. You chose not to. You're still wearing the Window Genie vest and you're working, still selling Window Genie, because what are you going to do? You're not going to retire, right? That's not you.
Correct. Yeah. So, I mean, very, very, very blessed that we built something that one was great for our owners. Our owners, for the most part, have been very successful, and blessed in that, for me to, kind of complete that trifecta. Ownership is time, income, and equity, and selling the franchise would be the equity portion. So lucky and blessed, because it was both. Because there's now a lot of people trying to do what Neighborly has done. They just happen to be the biggest in the world at it. So in 2016, as they were looking to grow, I was acquired in 16 when company sales were about 1.2 billion. Today, they're a little bit over 3 billion. So company's tripled in the 5 years since.
3 billion with a B.
Yeah, so that's a
revenue.
Large home service company, over 5,000 franchises. And so lucky in that they had already acquired another company like ours, that it was part of an inventory that made sense to them to take care of the homeowner. And I think super critical that how we ran the business, the integrity behind the operation of the company, a code of values. Dina Dwyer and her father started that code of values that Neighborly really kind of runs on today. We didn't have it identified as clearly as they did at the time, but we for sure operated under a very, very similar code of values. And that's important for Neighborly. They're not just looking to write a big check to anybody. It's got to be a cultural fit, operational fit. It's got to make sense, and it has. So in those 5 years, I stayed on. As you said, to me, retiring isn't getting a bunch of money and sitting on the beach. It's kind of pulling back from whatever got you there, and then maybe you do more of it, which I did 5 more years as president, and then stepped down for a month, and now back on board helping the sales team. Find new passion owners to become part of the team. So it's been a fun, interesting, long, great ride.
Rik, I had somebody once tell me working is much more fun when you don't have to.
For sure. When you're in that grind, you just wake up and you're kind of blinded by the grind. You got to push it forward, and everybody's got an aspiration. It's one crew, 10 crews. I wound up in the service industry, Lance, because I didn't know what I wanted to do at 29. I identified things I didn't want to do. So what I call a front door, I just didn't want anything that had a front door. So that's why I wound up in the world of service businesses. So for me, now that I didn't have a front door, I was going to have trucks with wheels. So how many of those do I need to become successful? Now we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of trucks around the country, but you just wake up every day and it's almost like a blind push. You just keep doing it and doing it. So it's for sure is much more fun when you've kind of hit the finish line. And the finish line isn't necessarily you stop and you go play golf every day. It's just sort of mission accomplished, but not really.
So let's start building really your history now, so people can track. There are people listening that want to be exactly like you. They want to create their own brand. And I help people set their successful independent business up to franchise. I also, as a broker, match people up and find them their best and perfect franchise. So when you started, you just did window cleaning out of the gate. You wanted something low tech. You wanted something that, was certainly scalable. So it was window cleaning. Let's talk about, your first franchisee and why franchising in the first place.
Sure. Yeah, great question. And I'm a good example of experience on both sides. So I was the guy that started from scratch, which is a lot of people consider why pay a franchisor with a bunch of money. It's a franchise fee and then ongoing royalties. There's that side, and then I'm going to do it myself because it's cheaper. Well, I've done both. And I will tell anybody looking at Window Genie or any Neighborly brand that if done correctly, you will spend more money trying to do this kind of business on your own than you will spend starting with us. I mean, my trial and errors and mistakes greatly exceeded the cost of what it takes to start a Window Genie or really any of the Neighborly brands today. So I woke up and said, let's go start. Didn't really dawn on me to start a franchise in part because in 1994, as I started looking into various home service companies, I finally realized that when we got to this very, I'm called really a niche with window cleaning, but the category of window cleaning, there was nothing national at the time. There's multiple opportunities today, but in 94, there was nobody. So I felt like if I'm going to work really hard and build something that I can create, maybe a great asset, maybe it's more than just in Cincinnati. And I was happy if it would be just Cincinnati. Hopefully I had the biggest one in Cincinnati because there were, 50 of them. But the plan was always, if we do it well and we document every day what we're doing, how we're doing as we learn, then it can be bigger than just a local or even regional window cleaning company. And we started with just the one service. And as you said, as we grew and added locations, we found customers were happy to let us provide additional services once we were in their home.
So what was the next service that came, the next logical service that they were asking for?
Well, I never would have been able to guess because you just don't know what they're looking for. But we would always say, thank you for the business, appreciate the opportunity, look forward to seeing you on the next cleaning. Is there anything else we can do for you? And they would always say something like, you guys are fantastic. Can you pressure wash our house or pressure wash our deck or can clean out our gutters? And after you hear that 20, 30, 500 times, you say, we pay a lot of money, all of us in the service world, to get in front of customers. Well, I paid to get in front of them and they like us. Let's figure out how we can provide another service and take care of the same customer, same great service, and stand behind it the same way. So when I began franchising, we're on our third iteration of taglines, but our first one at launch was cleaning America's windows, decks, and driveways. So it was catchy, it fit, it said exactly what we did. And that's how we, and our very first franchise owner from 1998, still with us today in Columbus, Ohio.
I love it.
By coincidence, he's a Buckeye.
And how did, he's another Buckeye. So how did he get involved? I always love hearing the first franchisee type stories. Was he a customer first?
No, well, they say you go to college for various reasons. One of them is connections. And I was in a fraternity, go Beta. And one of my fraternity brothers had an employee who had a brother and who was looking and moved down from Akron to Columbus. And, they trusted me because their friend knew me well from college. And off we went. I mean, it went very, very quickly. And our second one was friends with them. So number one and number two, fortunately, came very easy. And they're, still around.
And who was the one that convinced you? How did you start franchising? In the first place, what brought you to franchising? Did you think of doing it on your own? What was your strategy or plan way back when?
Well, I studied franchising. So I like to say I'm a student of franchising. So while I was still running the business, I would scour every magazine, probably like a lot of your listeners do, scour magazines. The internet didn't exist, but every place I could, and I would call that company. I would get their franchise packet. And before I started franchising, I had a stack that was literally 3.5 feet tall. So that's how I formed a lot of my thinking and the processes of what it was going to take. I did pay an outside consulting company because that's a whole different area of expertise from running a local business, no matter what that business does, whether you're squeezing out frozen yogurt or cleaning a window. It's a different practice. So I used an outside consulting company. We set things up. I hired a local attorney, all the technical things that you have to do. And you take a big old pile of money and then you cross your fingers and hope that somebody is passionate about what you've been doing and believes in the mission as much as you and everybody else on your team does at that time.
And it worked.
It worked. Surprise.
So when you were looking for franchisees way back when, how did you know who you were looking for? I mean, all these years later, you've certainly figured it out, and nothing's ever perfect, but you certainly have figured out that system. But even way back when, what were you looking for in a franchisee? Obviously, somebody you want to have a meal with, somebody you want to have a beer with. I mean, how did it work?
Yeah, I mean, that was one of some people say when you'd have a barbecue or a beer with them, I've always said in my head, if my admin said, hey, Rick, so-and-so is on the phone, I would say, great, put him on hold, I'll be right there, versus, tell him I'm busy and I'll call him back. You have to, you're not trying to build, and I think that kind of came from the fraternity where you have a bunch of guys in a house and we're all different. We came from different places, but there's a reason we picked that one versus the other 30. There's just some bond or connection there. And the other big thing was, and I've said this many, many, many times, that if I would have tried to start this at 26 years old, just a few years earlier, I quite possibly feel and believe that I might not have been successful. It's a terrible sensation to have the grass is always greener concept. So if you're not really ready and it's tough, then you think, wow, that job wasn't that bad, or my boss wasn't that bad, or my pay wasn't that bad. But when I made the decision at 29, I'm a huge believer in the why. And my why was, it's time. And here's all the things I want to control and need to control. It wasn't a money jump. It was, I want to do my own thing because of all the experiences that I've had. So when I launched, and it didn't matter how tough it was, I knew this was a better direction. My first day that I opened, when I made $0, was a way happier day than the day or month I made the most amount of money in any job. So I knew I was on the right track. So I look for people that understood their why, not, my boss is now mean to me, so I want to start a business. That's a terrible why. I can't.
No, you brought up something great. My dad used to always say 1% of something is better than 0% of nothing also.
Correct. That's right. So it's, you got to have your why down pat, and, then that's the easy part almost, but then you got to go find the thing that fits. If you're not a good sales guy, don't be in a business that requires you to communicate effectively and frequently with customers.
You just, Rick, you're a perfect guest because you just fell right into sort of the next little chapter. When it's, so we were talking about how somebody is the right franchisee for Window Genie or in a franchise at all. And really it comes down to what is their skill set. It's not necessarily what they've actually done always, but what is their skill set? At Window Genie, do you have to have sales ability or you just have to be a nice person?
Yeah, you don't have to. We've got a wide range of owners, as most franchises do. So you didn't have to come from selling copiers door to door, but you have to be comfortable. Actually, it's more than comfortable. You have to like engaging with people. I mean, right. I would fail miserably at door-to-door sales, but I feel like I'm very good and comfortable with a relationship sale, which is basically what a home service business is. For the most part, there's an issue or a need, phone rings, you talk to them. So you have to want to engage with the customer. Customers buy from people they like, know, and trust.
Right.
So customers always only buy from people they like, know, and trust. So if you're that person, I've also always said, if you're a terrible employee and your coworkers didn't like you and your boss hated you, that's not going to change as an owner. Your same traits move over; they're actually more magnified. So
you're not going to be a good franchisee either.
it's going to be a terrible, terrible experience. So you have to enjoy talking to customers. Some businesses, like in Neighborly, it's more direct selling. So they do have salespeople, but it's a little bit more selling because it's a larger ticket. Window cleaning, I just have to do a good job from the front end phone call to the presentation at the front door in the kitchen to kind of transact that sale. And some people just aren't comfortable with that. Their history says that's, and it's not even an introverted thing. I'm certainly more introverted than extroverted, but when it comes to talking business and helping a customer where we can help them with their problems and give them solutions, that's easy to become and fully engage with a customer. So it's really important to know your skill set and what that franchisor is looking for.
Yeah. So in the early days, when, we all say within the industry that the first 5 franchisees are the most important. Everyone's obviously important, but the first 5, first 10, because you're building that foundation. And, you want amazing positive validation so that your existing franchisees can say how amazing Window Genie is and you should join. So when you look at the cross section of the first, 5 amazing franchisees, what did they do before joining Window Genie? I mean, window cleaning and Window Genie is, there are a lot of non-sexy home services businesses. People for some reason always want to jump in a food and beverage restaurant type businesses. But
I told my father, when the joke has been for years at the time, my father very graciously, paid my way through Ohio State. So he was with Merrill Lynch his whole life. And I considered that, but I realized, case in point, that what it took to be successful as a Merrill Lynch broker was 100 cold calls a day. He was very successful at that, as was my grandfather. I looked in the mirror and realized Rik Nonelle would be terrible at 100 phone calls a day. I could make it a few days, but I couldn't make a career out of it. So that's why that ended. But when I called him to say I figured it out, that the pause on the phone was me telling him that I was going to take my degree and go start a window cleaning company, and him not wanting all his buddies in the office to hear, how silly of an idea that was. Because to your point, it's low tech. So whether it's a maid business, a house painting, a handyman, it's like, why, what are you doing that for? Well, what if that's the best place in the world to make a lot of money without a whole lot of overhead? Well, there's the win. The first owner, one was worked in a warehouse, the other was a banker, the other was a marketing guy. So we were fortunate to have a spread there, so you could start to figure out, would only the banker be more successful at it versus the guy that came from a warehouse. So we had good diversity, which helped understand, different roles coming into the business, different skill sets. Because that's the other thing the franchise should do for somebody, is provide help and assistance in areas where you're not so good. I mean, if you're the world's best salesman, you don't need a franchisor to tell you how to sell other than how to model it around what they do. But if you're terrible at technology, well, then they're going to help you with all things technology related. So
I love it. And what about that camaraderie? One of the things I loved owning franchises is, people know you're going to get support, or they expect and hope you're going to get great support from the corporate training team and the mentorship programs on an ongoing basis. But then you also have the brotherhood and sisterhood of existing franchisees and those best practices as the brand starts to grow. I often talk about how, McDonald's, it wasn't corporate that came up with the filet of fish and the Big
Right.
Mac. Those were invented or created by franchisees. So there is a new sort of brain trust out there. How did that feel when you were growing Window Genie?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges, is, and I went through that. When I started the business, I was the only person that I knew, from whether it was high school or college friends, that had started a business. The only one. So every single person that I knew was working for somebody. So when I started the business, my circle of influence was me. There was no one to talk to. I could only pat myself on the back. There was no one to help. And that's challenging. And I think that's, a lot of people are afraid of franchising, whether it's the cost or, I call it, you can't paint the front door pink. It's like if you live in a condo, you can't change your front door color because there's some HOA rules, and franchising has some rules. Well, not everybody's okay with rules, but for the most part, it's a way better thing to do. Well, I can say for sure today, and we're certainly a company built on culture, that one of the things that we offer, as every franchise should, that's successful or doing it correctly, is opening the door to easy access to other owners that are doing the same thing. Now, you could go independent, there's a window cleaning association. There's an association for everything out there, and join that. But I found out on my own back in the day, no one wanted to share their secrets, the tips of the trade, because they're like, I figured it out. I'm not going to give it to you for free. Well, that's not helpful. So we try really hard to engage and give the opportunity to engage owners with other owners, whether it's an annual convention, whether it's regional meetings. We have specialized groups where they work, 5 or 8 together in a group. It's significant. That's why I can say today we have owners, for example, hitting a top line sales number in year 2 or 3 that way back in the day it might have taken somebody 6 or 8 years.
Yep.
So that's
and what do you attribute that to? I mean, is it the fact that the brand has just grown dramatically, more awareness overall?
No, I don't think it's that. I mean, I think it certainly helped in the last 5 years with Neighborly, because there's a lot of intense, expensive cross marketing being done. But I think it really is a relentless, dogged determination to make your system better, which is what we all should do once you start the business. So you fine tune what support looks like, you fine tune how you're marketing, how you pay employees, internet,
quicker ramp up, I'm sure.
ramp up is significantly quicker. Back in the day, it was, I will spend what you want versus here's the requirement today. It feels more heavy-handed to some people, but the reality is we can show you the numbers. You're going to grow significantly faster when you spend X over 20 years ago when it was, hey, do what you want. Because as an independent owner, you kind of do what you want, which is what I did, but there's no one telling you, is that enough money to get you over the break-even hump? And did you have enough money to sustain getting to break-even, which is why a lot of independents fail, because they have no idea of the data or the metrics necessary to, one, get to break-even, or two, to then ultimately become successful. So we worked really hard at scaling that over 20 years.
Yeah, the independence we talked about earlier a little bit, that black hole or that kind of abyss when you're an independent concept, you don't have that blueprint. You don't have that map, if you will, to know where you're going to go. It's never been done before. Overall, so let's, you mentioned the cross marketing, the cross pollination, I guess you can say too. One of the powerful things about Neighborly that I loved hearing is that if you're opening, let's say, a window Genie in a market that obviously there's no window Genie, there are going to be other Neighborly home service brands in those markets. So the marketing department has those names and phone numbers and addresses of all of those folks that have been Neighborly customers over the years that they can now market to say, Window Genie is now here. I love that. I think that's pretty amazing and powerful.
Yeah, and that there's a lot of depth to that concept. So for example, we enter a market, we now have other kind of people on our team, operating with a similar code of value, identical code of values. But for example, I have an owner in North Jersey that every Thursday they have a gathering for breakfast with 5 other brands. So they all do different things. Somebody is fixing, appliances, and somebody is painting something, and we're cleaning something, but we all have similar problems, concerns, and challenges. Finding employees, keeping employees, finding customers, fixing trucks, all those kind of things. The second thing is they've spent a tremendous amount of money on a Neighborly app. So now customers can go to a Neighborly app and request service. The difference between that and a home advisor, which is just an aggregator, you have no idea who you're getting. You have multiple quotes. It really kind of drills down on this, multiple companies doing multiple things that are all kind of in a similar mindset. And then to your other point, so when we enter a market, when, for example, Molly Maid cleans a home, they'll get a thank you for using Molly Maid email, but then they'll also get a follow-up that says, here's all the other Neighborly brands that are here in town to assist you around your home. So Window Genie is getting grouped in with thousands, we have about 8 million active customers in Neighborly, 8 million active, not total, that's active participating customers that are being shared, every day. So certainly Neighborly for any of the brands is a unique opportunity that, isn't afforded to somebody, even Window Genie pre-acquisition. It's a whole different animal.
It's really fantastic. Neighborly becomes the one brand to trust in the home services space. And it's easy. Okay, I just pick somebody from Neighborly and I know I'm going to get my great service and high value. So I think that's phenomenal. When did you really know, when you were building Window Genie, Rik, when did you know you made it? When did you really know that, you call Dad again, you gave the example of Dad. When was Dad now proud of you and said, my son made it, he's an entrepreneur?
I think, be honest, I think it sounds, I don't know how it sounds. I don't know if any true entrepreneur ever feels like they've made it. I feel like there's always something more you should be doing. I know at the time of the acquisition, it's like, God, we still need X more markets, or X more vans in the system, or X more owners, or more top line. It's clear, obviously, when you sign off and you sign a contract and they wire you some money with a bunch of zeros on it, that feels like it. But you still have in your head, gosh, and that's part of the reason I stayed on for 5 more years is you never know how high you're pushing. So you just keep pushing. But
yeah,
you kind of felt like when you started getting high rankings on either Entrepreneur 500, or you started having private equity groups, call or email or mail frequently, and you're like, well, we must be doing something right. And we ignored those, for years and years. So you get a
People were
sense of
after
it.
you. They wanted you.
Yeah, so you get a sense of it, but I think any true entrepreneur, just if you set the bar high, every time you get close, you kind of reset it. So I don't know if I ever would have felt we were, because when are you truly there? You can set a goal of 100 million. Well, you get to 100, then it's 200, and it's 200 million, then you're 300. So I don't know if you ever feel like you've topped out.
You reminded me, a lot of my entrepreneurial friends, and I've always been an entrepreneur. There's a saying you might have heard of: "Done beats perfect." And it's really what you're saying. You're never going to be perfect. You're always going to strive for more, and that is the goal of the visionary, which is what you are, and certainly what you were in the early days of Window Genie. And in some instances, that's the problem for so many entrepreneurs out there that are looking at business opportunities and are looking at a franchise. I tell people, step one is you have to be willing to start. Otherwise,
That's right.
it's never a great time. Well, now's not a good time, Lance.
Right.
Maybe in 6 months. I talk to people sometimes for 2 years before they pull the trigger on buying a franchise.
Super true. I mean, that goes back to the why. I mean, when your why is right, you're ready to jump in tomorrow. If your why is not right, you get all the reasons, why you can't. Also, I'd say to somebody, if you're the person that at home in your fridge, before your family decides to switch from Coke to Pepsi, you're going to draw out a bunch of spreadsheets and analyze what that move looks like. Ownership's going to be really tough because, business owner, you've got 100 decisions a day to make. And if you only make 20 of them because you're spreadsheeting, well, you have 80 that carry over to tomorrow. And now tomorrow you have 180. And then you never catch up. And business becomes
You'll be overwhelmed.
Yeah. So you gotta get it close and then work on getting it really right later. But ownership is about being flexible, getting close. You don't have to hit the bullseye every time. But to your point, none of it matters till you jump off. I'm a big believer in the belly flop into the deep end. Don't put your baby toe in the pool.
Check it off the list. Done beats perfect. Rik, I want to read off. I have a list in front of me, and I think this is really important. Everything from Franchise Business Review, Entrepreneur Magazine, Money Magazine, Inc. Magazine. Window Genie has received all these accolades over the years. Top home-based business, fastest growing, top low-cost brand, fastest growing private company. I interviewed David, who is the president of Window Genie, on a previous podcast, and David was fantastic. And David was a franchisee. Talk about believing in your own product and your own system. He was a franchisee of Window Genie, and while you were the founder, and then I heard he sold for well over $1 million. He sold his franchise in about 8 years. So that's one of the things that people need to understand. The Journey song, "Don't Stop Believing." You can do this. This is why franchising is so successful. David followed a system, became a millionaire, and now he's president of the brand. So tell me how much you like making millionaires.
Yeah, I'd tell you that's one of the best parts about what I've done for 20 years is, and David would tell you, Window Genie impacted his life more than he ever could have imagined. So that's the beauty of franchising, at least from my position over all those years, is those that can't help themselves and don't let you help them. As a franchise owner, you really need to be infinitely coachable. And David was one of the most infinitely coachable owners we've ever had. So it is really fun, and it's kind of what gives my purpose to helping somebody that can change their life. We had a tough run through the recession prior. We've got a lot of owners that came from, whether it was making X amount of dollars or just really didn't like their job, to creating significant income. I've got owners that take 6-8 weeks of vacation a year because they can and they want to, and it matters to them. So the buildup of ownership, and that only comes from ownership. You'll never get that as an employee. You can climb your way to the corporate ladder and you get 4 weeks. The only way to really attain and control those things is through ownership. And David was a shining example of, he got in there, he worked hard. And I used to say, every franchise advertises and says, follow the system. And it almost sounds overused, but what does it really mean? But it really has meaning. Every top successful owner that I have will say, you got to follow the system, because the people on the bottom that struggle the most are the ones that just don't follow the system. They know everything. They're not coachable. But following the system, and again, make sure that the company you align with has a system, but follow the system and work it hard every day. Kind of what faith is. I don't know for sure what's going to happen, but I have faith that if I just keep doing this, I'm going to get there. And he was successful in building a great bottom line. And I think because in part Neighborly, he's able to get probably above average multiple on it. And, he was right for his why is like mine, helping and coaching people up to be successful owners. And that's what he's doing today now as president of Genie.
Follow the system, trust the process. That's another one that we hear often with franchising. You're in business for yourself, not by yourself. It's I still can't believe I'm looking at the list of accolades here. And we know the reasons that people want to join Genie, and you're still around. So I'll have everything in the show notes on how to get in touch with your brand, or people can of course reach out to me. But let's talk a little bit in the final moments more about what is your process today. So there's a first phone call, there's some sort of meet the team discovery day, and eventually there's an opportunity. It's a two-way street. You're selecting them, they're selecting you as well. So give me a little rundown of that.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's really important. Some people have the misconception that you ought to be really lucky that I'm considering joining your company. Well, that sounds great, but that's not true. It is really critical. I mean, it starts there. You have to want us, but also we have to want you. It's got to be a great fit, a cultural fit, a background fit, territory, all those things. But it really starts with, from my perspective, that first call, which is 30, 60 minutes, where we're not digging deep. We're kind of staying very high level. Why are you considering doing this? And somebody says, well, I'm ready, and I don't need my wife. And I always like to say, so you're going to quit your job, go to zero income, lose your 401k in contribution, no vacation any longer, invest $150,000 for the hope, dream, and prayer that you make some money someday, and she's fully behind you. And they say, well, maybe she does need to be involved. So it's a big decision. So we're going to talk about what you're looking to do and why. It goes back to the why. And then answer questions about us to make sure it makes sense. We're not looking for somebody to clean a window. We have guys out there that we pay well to go do that. Second call, we get a lot deeper. So we can really start to understand the nuts and bolts and mechanics of the business to figure out, if I wake up every day and my feet hit the floor, can I go full speed and charge ahead every day and make this business work? Then we're going to have you talk to some owners. That's the critical part that I never had. Let me understand what makes this machine tick. Do I fit? Does it make sense? Can I do that? Can I see myself doing it? Yeah. And if you do, you move forward. If you don't, you stop. And then through Meet the Team Day, it's a great opportunity for you to meet us as a team and for us to meet you more intimately and figure out if what we're all doing together makes sense. So it's an easy, smooth process, but one that really makes sense before you jump in.
Yeah, and I tell people, I said, look, it's a very natural process. There's an evolution from when you go to call one, let's say, to the end when you start to validate. It's pretty natural, and you either fit or you don't, and either they're going to tell you or you're going to tell them. It's not forced. I always tell people, it's not like somebody asks you to slide your credit card on call number one. So
I always say when we're sitting there at Meet the Team Day, the first thing I say is, please raise your hand if you think I'm going to ask you to write a check or sign a contract today. And some people are like, well, I'm not really sure. Like, we're not. Raise your hands if you think I'm going to throw your car keys on the roof so you can't leave here today. No, not that either. So it's not a sales day. It's not a pressure day. And again, some organizations do that. That's not the Neighborly way for sure. But it's coming together to figure out, and as you said, it's exactly right. It's a natural progression. At some point, we got to get to a place where we've met, and either it makes sense or it doesn't. So it is a natural, smooth progression with no pressure to figure out, are both sides doing the right thing together? Because it is a team, it is a family, and everybody needs to be comfortable with that decision.
Wonderful. So final thoughts for the day. Any final parting words of wisdom?
Great question. Didn't see that one coming, but I will tell you, if you look at that painting in the background, the word grit. So when Mary Thompson, who's the COO of Neighborly, after the acquisition, she will tell you she was very concerned that a founder was going to stick around, because normally somebody sells their company, they take their money and they go do whatever they're going to do. Well, I mean, I did that, but I was still wanting to be with the company. And Mary started, she was in the military. She was a Marine. She jumped out of helicopters. Then she was a franchisee. She became the president of the brand. Neighborly recruited her. She became the president of Mr. Rooter, and now COO. And so she's got a wealth of experience. And we had a chat on one of her Cincy visits about what makes a successful owner. And we both kind of said almost at the same time, it's that 4-letter word right there, which is grit. And it's hard to define grit to somebody or say, do you have grit? But it is the word, I think, that separates those that become really successful, or even successful versus those that don't. And I can ask if somebody is, my signature line on my email says, stay gritty. The Neighborhood League presidents call me Mr. Gritty, because it's just, it is the word. You got to work hard and follow and all those things, but you got to be gritty, because when the going gets tough, you got to figure it out and stick to it. It's supposed to be hard, but the result and outcome of having a successful business is greater than working for somebody. So it's intentionally harder, but it's not for everybody, because it takes a lot of grit to get there. But when you do it correctly and you're the right person, best thing you can ever do, obviously.
I love it. And that was a great way to end it. Rik, thank you for being here. Stay gritty, stay happy, which I know you will. And thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, Lance, I appreciate the invite. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for listening today. Please like, follow, and subscribe. This is Lance Graulich. Until next time.